Okay, good morning everyone. It's very nice to see you in such great numbers. My work has been made easier by Luis giving the introduction about the survey, and by Mihaela by introducing some of the concepts that we went through. And you will see that most of our results are quite similar, but there are some differences, and again Luis will point them out later for you. I will try to give you a bit of the taste of innovation in Food Valley. And again, you will have to take my word for it for the moment, because the actual introduction to Food Valley and the history of it will be given by Mr. Iup, I think right after my presentation. Okay, so Food Valley is located in quite a small place. It's called Wageningen, a bit hard to pronounce as well. And this is located in the east of the Netherlands. Why is it called, Food Valley? Again, Joep will explain to you later. And one of the roles of Food Valley is to bring together members from the industry. And those members are known as the Food Valley Society. And these are about 100 food processors and service providers. From these 100, we tried to reach about 15, again divided by size, 5 small, medium, and large food processors, and we managed to reach about 8 service providers. These were private incubators, academia, R&D institutes, things like that. And our response rate was actually 100% because the first contact was made by Mr. Iup. So after him giving a phone call and saying, hey, look, we're doing this research, could you please help? Then my job was again very easy. Everybody said yes, of course we are willing to help. The results first will be given on approach to innovation, and you've seen this picture before in Mihaela's presentation. I would like to add what we perceive as a step and as a cycle. So if you are a company that maybe has an R&D institute, came up with a few ideas, but it never actually made it to the market, well, that's just a step. We see innovation as a full cycle, from the idea all the way to production, pilot testing, scaling up, and bringing it successfully on the market. And it also has to stay on the market for at least a few years. Otherwise, you get it there, but it's not really successful. Well, is that really an innovation? And we also want to see what our respondents think of innovation. Do they have a definition for it? Do they see it as something very well established? Or how do they see it? Well, obviously, we didn't get one single definition for innovation. Everybody sees it from their own point of view. And that was, the trend for that was mostly a combination between a few formal guidelines and spontaneity, leaving the freedom to develop to the employees, to sources from outside. And that was mostly summarized as innovation on the job. Related to a definition of innovation are also formal innovation strategies. So you have your strategic plan for the company. Does it include some part that is specifically related to innovation? Or, how do you go about it? And yes, some of the companies, especially the large ones, had some strategies, mostly at management level, at R&D and team level. But small companies, I don't think they deal that much with plans, but they see it part as their business culture. Again, as Mihaela said, in a small company with 10, 20 employees, the same employees wear different hats. So it is part of the business culture. And this is a quote that supports that. So the whole team is involved in decision making in the structure and allocation of money. What are the drivers in Food Valley? Again, social challenges and competitiveness were the main drivers for service providers. Social challenges and profit were the main drivers for small companies equally. What is very revelatory is that none of the large companies mentioned social challenges as a driver, even though I'm sure all of them had corporate responsibility plans. well, I think it's also about buzzwords. If I would have put in their corporate responsibility, they would have said, yes, of course. Social challenges already, it's a bit out of their usual vocabulary. But some of them, yes, they mentioned we do try to feed the world responsibly. None of the large companies, though. And for the small companies, all of them mentioned another driver that was not put by us in the questionnaire. They said, yes, but we also have the human drive. We innovate because we are curious for knowledge, because of the people and the culture of innovation. Resources, again, you've seen we divided them by internal and external resources. And for internal, again, without differentiation across size, the most allocated internal resource is human. So I've seen this problem a lot. Large companies, yes, they can afford to have an R&D department and put 20, 100 people on that. Small companies, well, the same person that's at a management level or in the lab, they have to take care of it. So equally, human resources are very much used. Secondary are technological resources and financial, of course. For external, for me it was quite surprising, but the most looked for external resource was networking. It didn't come out as financial being the most sought or technical. Those were, again, very nicely mirrored. They were secondary. First resource was networking. And of course, these companies all had some of their equipment or their labs where they did part of their innovation, and they allocated a part of their budget to specifically for innovation. And unfortunately, we tried to get a feeling of the figures, but most of them did not want to disclose. But at the same time, they are continuously looking to improve their technologies, their technical reach, and also continuously applying for third-party funding. Barriers, again, as you've seen, it's the same in the Netherlands. Money and regulations, sorry for the use of the word, but money and regulations are the main barriers. What is, again, revelatory for this case is that among the small companies, there was no trend. You would expect, especially for the small companies, to say, we really cannot find the money to do that. There was no trend. Each of them said, mentioned something else as a barrier. Just a quote, regulations are years behind sustainable food. And what I thought that was very interesting related to money is, of course, we don't have enough money, but as a service provider, if you are 100% funded by the government, researchers get lazy, and the link with industry is not formed. And finally, I think for the companies that are non-innovative, the biggest barrier is taking the risk. Just going, this year I received some extra funding, third-party funding. What do? Do I start something new? Do I hire maybe a researcher or just a new intern that can sit in the office and think of new things? Or am I going to put it in my usual, I'm going to hike up production or something like that? So I think this is, again, one of the biggest barriers, just saying, this year I'm going to do it. Our next question was about collaboration. For Mihaela's case, she had answers no or yes, but in our case, my usual question back was, what do you mean? Of course we are open to collaboration. It's the way we work. We couldn't work without collaboration. And I liked very much when one of the companies admitted that, our competencies and the ones of our clients are just not enough. If you really want to add value and satisfy your customer, you will come out of your own little box and say, hey neighbor, I see that you can help out a bit. And for them, the profit will be higher if they do that. And this, I think, is quite amazing for some people, but they even collaborate with their competitors. I've spoken to a service provider whose researchers also worked in the labs of their competitors. Of course, they have agreements about that, very well-written agreements, but it is being done. Intellectual property, again, the most hot potato, I think Mihaela said. And it's dealt in the same way mostly. They keep it either as a trade secret or try to get it to the market as soon as possible. Be the first one with a product on the market, get yourself known, then your competitors, well, they might follow after you, but they will not be as successful. And well, some of them also applied for patents, of course. And how do they deal with that? Is it all internally, or do they go out to legal offices? Well, in both ways. Of course, the larger companies can afford to have a legal person inside. The smaller companies usually go outside for help. And well, here are a few of the codes. We have our own legal department. Somebody mentioned the issue of pirating. Yes, we come up with something new, with something very performant. We try to put it out there, and well, in a few months we see it copied with less quality materials and at a much lower price. Well, again, how do you deal with that? We just do it upfront with very well-written agreements and non-disclosure agreements, partly patents, but also partly keeping it a secret. We go through the membership with Food Valley right now, and well, I'm not sure how well it is seen there. These are the main cogs in the Food Valley cluster, and VUR stands for Wageningen University and Research Center, and that's the main cog. Food Valley cluster was created around Wageningen University, which is one of the best universities in Europe in food and agriculture. So because they have, I think, at least 10,000 people employed over there that are very well-trained researchers, and also because companies can easily access the workforce pool, the cluster was created around it. The Food Valley organization is made as a foundation, so it's called FVF, Food Valley Foundation. And Oostenwijk is the Economic Development Agency East Netherlands that Joep Koenen is part of, and he will tell you more about it. Well, these are the main organizations in the cluster, and the foundation and Oostenwijk work on implementing some of the programs of the cluster. And of course, sometimes the cogs need a bit of oiling to work good, but most of the times they work very well in the same direction. And well, what is the, oh, sorry, you have a question?
Can you describe how these relationships work together? Or are we going to talk about that later?
I think you will.
Okay.
I will just have to go very quickly. I think I have 3 minutes left. About the main role of Food Valley, well, when we asked people, what has the cluster, what has Food Valley done for your innovation? Nothing. Okay, well, then what are the benefits? What do they do for you? And the main benefit of being part of Food Valley is networking. Just getting to know other people, to find your partners that you need. And well, secondary to that was a launching platform for startup companies. Also with a mention, how do you keep adding value after that? And a marketing tool, very much a marketing tool. It also makes a stronger case for a single company if you make yourself known as part of a high quality membership or cluster. Of course, none of the companies said they have any drawbacks by associating themselves with Food Valley, none whatsoever. But there was also a question of what can Food Valley do more for you? What can they do more? And of course, each company had something personal to say about it. Well, they could focus more on their small-sized companies, or, well, they could focus more on the large-sized companies. But mostly, the trend was internationalization. So the Netherlands is quite a small country. Food Valley has been there for quite a while, and already everybody knows everybody else, so to speak. Companies are quite secure in their own networks. But Food Valley has increasingly started to bring delegations from outside. And well, a problem is that, of course, these delegations come from Asia, from the US. They come and they go, and nothing happens. And then the companies also put the accent on, well, we want them to focus more on internationalizations, but with B2B relationships and R&D collaborations, where people come and we actually get to do a project, to work together. And I think this is also why, well, why we are here today a bit. And well, to bring the summary of our research, is there a recipe for innovation? Can we put a bit of technology, this much amount of money, and make us more innovative? I don't think so. There is no recipe. And in Food Valley, companies are making use of their own human resources and continuously look to improve their technological, financial, and networking reach. At the same time, they are raising awareness on them being part of Food Valley. They are branding themselves as Food Valley, and the international community recognizes that. And most of all, I think it's also an issue of sectoral mindset and place in time. And again, Joop will tell you more about what that means. And well, I think that was it. Thank you very much. And if you have any other questions. Yes?
Question for actually both of you. Was there any distinction made between product innovation and process innovation?
There was. We did introduce that in the questionnaire. Well, I think most of respondents were product innovators, but also process. The results were not that, at least in my case, were not that relevant to put up there. But yes, that was part of the...
On the Ontario side, that's okay. On the Ontario side, there was a clear distinction between product and process innovation. Generally, companies that see themselves as product innovators attached process improvement and process changes to that innovation process. Companies, smaller companies or medium-sized and small companies, they saw themselves more as process improvers. So innovation came more towards process improvement. So that's kind of the differences that we noticed in Ontario from the 27 food processors that responded.
I think we know who the key drivers of the product innovation are. Who are the key drivers of processing innovation?
It could be anything from reducing cost, increasing efficiencies, increasing bettering conditions for workers, making.
So I know what it is, but what is the key driver? What is it? Is it internal employees? Is it people on the line? Is it management? Is it technology? Is
yeah. And the answer to that is a cooperation between middle management and the floor employee together with the executive management. But what I felt, and I don't have solid numbers behind that, was that the driver was middle management more than the executive or the employee.
In the car industry, much of the processing innovation has come from a linkage or collaboration with applied research at universities. That doesn't seem to be the way necessarily in the food business.
Yeah.
Why was that? I don't know the answer.
I see somebody...
Yeah, Luis will touch on that. Dr. Hill, you have it?
That was actually my question to Ioana. You mentioned that government-funded research doesn't seem to get well implemented. Was university research included in that?
Yes, it doesn't mean that it's not well implemented. It means you don't have to fund it 100%. Because then if you don't fund it 100%, then the researchers have to go out and make that happen. They have to go and get contracts. And that's when they go and they talk to industry and they really get the feeling of the industry. What do people want? What do they want on the market? Otherwise, if you just give them all the money, well, some researchers are very happy with that. They go to their own labs and that's it. They come up with results, but it's not always, it might be blunt, but that is the case.
So to follow that, this gets a little bit more, again, towards the definition of innovation. But we have certainly seen that trend you've just mentioned. I work in a university, I chair the Department of Food Science, and it's almost impossible to get a single dollar to do research now once it's matched with industry dollars. And what that means, in my view, is that we will 10, 15, 20 years from now really exhaust the fundamental driver of innovation, which is basic research.
Again, I think some of the speakers will touch on that more later.
Yeah, we'll touch on that this afternoon also from different models. And I think what I'm missing in the presentation there's not a clear distinction between product and process innovation to my mind. And what you also have to do in the modern food industry is chain innovation. You have to look for new chains, for new partnerships, because innovation is not a single issue.
Okay, I look forward
So
to that.
we'll go into that this afternoon.
I'll address it just after coffee, don't worry.
Okay.